Welcome everyone to the final round of the Sinquefield Cup 2025. We have world champion Domaraju Gukesh taking on one of the finest classical chess players in the world of chess, Fabiano Caruana. Battles between Gukesh and Caruana are very exciting for the world of chess because both of them are considered to be two top classical players in the world. Also, in the final round of the Norway chess, it was Fabiano Caruana who halted Gukesh, beat him there, and took away his chances of winning the title. Gukesh always greatly inspired when he faces Fabi. He has got a pretty good score against him, beat him twice in the Olympiad, also did well against him in the Grand Chess Tour events and so on. But this one is going to be big because Fabi is fighting for the top spot in the Sinquefield Cup. He is in the joint lead along with Praggnanandhaa, and if Gukesh manages to beat Fabi here, it opens up Pragg's route to the first place. Pawn to e4 played here by Fabi, and Gukesh responds back with e5. Knight comes out to f3 and knight to c6. And Caruana plays the Italian with bishop to c4. Gukesh responds back with the symmetrical bishop to c5. This will be very exciting clash between them in terms of openings because Fabi has kept his chances to go for something, like he's not played a very dull opening. And I think he's also looking at the game of Praggnanandhaa to see how he is playing against Levon, but Levon has chosen a very safe opening. So Fabi knows that that game should end in a draw. He goes there to check it. a6 played by Gukesh. So if Fabiano manages to win this game, he just takes the title with sole first place. Bishop drops back to a7 and now pawn to h3. You can see how the king on e8 is still in the center. Gukesh isn't castling, he's keeping his options open. Queen to e7 played here, and the idea is to later play bishop e6 and to trade it here. Now bishop comes out to e6 and knight to d2, so that if you take on c4, I can take back with the knight. Black finally castles here, and Caruana brings his rook to e1. The main ideas in this opening revolve around the break d4 for white. If white manages to successfully get the d4 break, he would get a good position. Queen comes out to b3. And now Gukesh is thinking about what should he do. h6, also a very standard move. Knight g5, this square is taken away from the knight as well as the bishop in the future. Caruana takes on e6. A very interesting choice because he's going to trade the queens as well, I believe, and which means that of course his chances of an attack or creating complications reduce, but on the other hand he gets a risk-free edge here. It's small edge, knight to b3, he has extra space in the position. It looks promising for sure. Let's see how Gukesh plays these positions. He is not particularly like the biggest positional expert there. Gukesh loves dynamics on the board. And Caruana plays bishop to d2. Maybe somewhere he's planning to push his pawn to c4. That could be an idea. Pawn to b5 played. Gukesh fighting back for space. Rook to c1. Now this c4 plan can get serious because then the c6 knight, the c7 pawn weakness is something to look at. Knight comes back to e7. Gukesh holding on here, and let's see what Fabi does. He does push his pawn to c4. I do see the pressure mounting a bit here on Gukesh. He takes on c4, and I think that you must take back with the rook, otherwise you lose the e4 pawn. So rook takes, and now the c7 pawn is weak. So d5 played by Gukesh. Wow, very interesting, because if rook takes c7, you want to take on e4. So Caruana plays e takes d5, and rightly so. The position has sharpened a bit now. c7 is a bit weak. He takes knight e d5, and his plan is rook e1 to attack the e5 pawn. And yes, he does it. Wow. And Gukesh goes back knight d7. I like how calmly he's defending this. And Fabi now plays pawn to g3, maybe trying to improve the position of his king with king g2. And where does Gukesh go next? I was wondering if rook b8 makes sense to put pressure on the b4 pawn. He plays f6 to safeguard his e5 pawn here. And Caruana brings his king up to g2. One of the best moves in the position. Gets up there. And Gukesh plays rook to d8. He's also eyeing the d3 pawn. And Fabi pushes pawn to d4, getting rid of one of his weaknesses there, the d3 pawn. And Gukesh chops off the pawn, e takes d4. Caruana comes back. Key moments in the game. Knight takes d4, and now very, very critical moment. If you push c5, I have knight e6, which is very strong. But Gukesh manages to find the most accurate way to play here. He takes, rook takes, and now he goes knight to f8, a lovely move, just defending his rook on his knight on d5. And Fabi goes h4. Maybe trying to clamp down the structure with h5. It's moves like these which look very, very deceptive. You know, it looks like nothing's happening, but h5 is played here. And now after rook c4, rook d6, rook to c5, Gukesh plays king f7, knight comes to d4, and knight d7. The rook moves back, and in comes the tactic. Knight takes b4, bishop takes b4, rook takes d4, and now comes a check to e7. King g6, he takes the pawn on c7, he gets back his pawn, but Gukesh takes the bishop, rook takes on d7, and now he saves his pawn, rook to g8. Caruana plays rook a7, and Gukesh chops off another pawn, rook takes a4. The game is going to end in a draw now, rook d6. Those middle moves which actually Gukesh played really well. He kept his control. He didn't go berserk and try to change something. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook, rook e8 he plays. Caruana goes rook a7, and king to h6 played. Comes back rook a5, showing the path to a repetition. Gukesh takes that repetition, rook a7. They are repeating the moves. King h6, and yes, the players are going to agree to a draw. Caruana calls the arbiter there, pauses the clock, and says going to play the move rook a7. She asks if he's written down the move, and makes the move rook a7, and it is a draw. So the game ends in a draw. A very solid performance there. I want to take you back to that moment where we kind of rushed through the moves. After f6, king g2, d4 takes. This is where we saw knight f8, a lovely move. h4 was met with h5, and then rook c4. There was some pressure from white side, but Gukesh played this move rook d6. I loved how his knight on d5 was so solidly positioned defending this pawn. No one could move it. Rook c5. He brings his king in. Another good move. Then the knight jumped into d4, and here is where there are tactics, because if you take knight b4 here, there is rook c7 check, and so he actually played knight to d7 attacking the rook. The rook went back, and now he took on b4. So the tactics somehow worked for Gukesh perfectly. He calculated it to precision and took the knight, and even though both the rooks reached the 7th rank, this turned into a draw. So Gukesh ends the Sinquefield Cup with 4 points out of 9, a score which he might not be too thrilled with. He had a couple of losses in this tournament. First round to Praggnanandhaa, the second one he lost to Wesley So. He did beat Nadirbek Abdusattarov and did play some exciting games of chess, but it's definitely something that Gukesh wouldn't be too thrilled about his performance. On the other hand, Fabi will now go and play the playoffs against Pragg and potentially Wesley So. For Gukesh, his next tournament starts in under a week now. He will be playing at the FIDE Grand Swiss, and we'll be hoping for a comeback by the champion. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.